Hello everybody. Welcome back to another session on Python programming. We're discussing concept of functions. In the last session, we actually focused on some important things. After we finished how to give a call to a function, we talked about the positional argument, the arbitrary number of keyword arguments, and other things we had completed. We also saw position only and arbitrary only arguments, positional only and keyword only arguments. Those things we have seen. It's time for us to look into some additional concept about functions. So let's today begin with some simple aspects first, and then later we'll go into more detailed thing. Remember, since the time we started with function, I have been telling you that when you write your script where you call the function, that has to be written in something called as if name dunder equal to main. But I haven't told you the reason for this. One goes in for concept of function because of concept of reusability. That means I should be in a position to reuse the thing that I have designed today, henceforth in all other applications. For anything to be reusable, I should design it in such a way that what I have defined, my colleagues, even myself in future, in other projects, I should be in a position to use it. Reusability is one of the most, or I'll say, it's one big reason that motivates us to go in for this concept of functions. So let's see as to how this reusability can be done by using this if name equal to main. Actually, this topic could have been discussed when we discussed concept of modules, but then we cannot postpone it even further. We'll have a detailed discussion about concept of modules later. But let me talk about this special dunder name dunder. Henceforth in Python, when you see two underscores, don't ask me why, it is called as dunder. So if I say underscore name underscore, you will not say so, you will say dunder name dunder. So if somebody says dunder, we should understand there are two underscores which have been put across. So let's jump on to understand what this particular concept is. So it's an attribute. Okay, dunder name dunder is an attribute. So what kind of attribute? It's a function attribute. What kind of attribute? Python attaches a string identifier to every function at creation time for debugging purpose. So there will be some name by which Python will identify every function at the creation time. So later when you are debugging, you will understand which is the code that we are debugging. You can access this internal name with name attribute. So if I say echo message and print echo.name, this is an attribute of the function. So this is not if name equal to main. This is about the function. So with every function that we define, def echo or whatever we do, it is always going to have this attribute called as name. So let's check this particular attribute called as name with every function. So let me just open up some example for you to discuss this aspect, demonstrate this aspect. Look, we have this particular function. Let's talk about some function. Say this is KWRGS function or any function that you can come across. So let's say we had designed some function to do some calculations like factorial and other things. Let's open up one of those functions. So if you go here, we had some functions that we had discussed. Let's say these codes that you had written. Okay. Or some of the digits. Let's keep it simple. This was the function that you had designed. So there was one function called as get integer, there was some function called as get some of the digits, and then we said if name equal to name. Now this name attribute is different, and the name attribute means some characteristic properties of something. So every function has this kind of attribute called as name. You want to see about it? Let's compile this particular code. So code is ready, and this function called as sum of the digits. If I now say print this sum of the digits dot dunder name dunder. So it's saying, okay, the name of the function is sum of the digits. So you will argue with me, sir, what's so special? We can see the name of the function as it is written here. Why do you want us to find out the name of the function with this attribute? Okay, that's an obvious question, isn't it? So anybody would ask this particular question. If the function is already there, why would you add another attribute to the same function, which is the name of the function itself? Now, to understand this, let's take an example. which will help you understand this particular concept in a better way. What I'll do is I'll take the same function, but I'll make some changes in terms of how am I going to access that particular function. Every function has this particular attribute. So let's talk about this attribute. Let me give name to this function. Let me also add documentation comment to this particular function. So that's a documentation comment. And it says int is a parameter. So here I'll say, what is this num parameter? The number whose sum of the digits is to be calculated. And what does it raise? It raises an error in case if something goes wrong. So यहाँ पर raise कर रहे error. It raises error if the parameter passed is not of type integer. And what does it return? It returns a number whose sum of digits to be calculated, returns sum of the digits of the argument passed. That is what this function does. So this is about documentation comment, correct? So I hide it. That's a documentation comment that we have. Let me save this function. So this was the function that we have. Huh? Watch it very carefully what I'm going to do. This function is executed there in the memory now. So we have this particular function which is currently available in the memory. There is a function which is currently present in the memory. And to check that, I can just say dir. You will find this sum of the digits is a function which is present in the memory. I hope you can see this as sum of the digits is a function which is present in the memory. Now, while I'm debugging this particular program, how will I know which function is being executed? Because the name of the function can really change. So if this was the name of the function, so if I say print sum of the digits dot dunder name dunder, the name is sum of the digits. So if I can read this property, I can also change this property. How do I do that? I say sum of the digits dot name is equal to, I say digit sum. Okay, so I'm saying, I'm to say the name of this particular function is digit sum. It says name digit sum is not defined. Okay, it's giving an error. So what I was trying to do here is, I was trying to assign a name to that particular function. So let's put this in quotes. Let's put this in quotes, and it worked. So the name of this particular function has now been changed to digit sum. And you want to have a proof of it? Look at that. If I say sum of the digits, it says name क्या है function का? Digit sum. Earlier क्या कह रहा था? इस function का नाम is the same name. That means earlier it was saying sum of the digits dot name is sum of the digits. But now we have changed the name of this particular function to digit sum. So now we have a function called as sum of the digits whose name is digit sum. So if I now say dir, I'm still getting sum of the digits. Now if I rerun that particular statement, dot name में क्या रहा है, and if I say digit sum का नाम क्या है? It says digit sum is not defined. Because digit sum is not a function, it's just a name of this particular function. So there is a property. Like if I talk about this particular pen, this pen is an object. If you can see this pen is an object. This pen is an object. This pen has some properties. What is the property? The name of the pen, the company that is, it's like Faber-Castell pen. Then color of the pen. Color of the pen is green. So color is one of the property. Name of the pen is the property. Does it have an eraser? That's another property. What's the price? That's another property. Likewise, every function also has a property called as name. So every function is going to have a name. By default, what you write after def, that itself is the name of the function. But if you want to change it, you could do it the way I showed you, dot name now. So what happens is when you're debugging the code, you're not visually seeing the code. There is some debugger which is running. So you may have given some name to that particular function. So you want to know which function is being executed or was it which was the function that was executed. So in that case, at any point of time, I want to know which function is currently being called. I could print this particular property inside the function itself. How could I do that? So if the function has to tell which function is getting called, let's do some interesting thing, a small thing here. I'll call this function. I'm say print what I'm saying. Watch it. I'm going to say f string. I say get underscore integer dot dunder name dunder is called. So I'm saying this particular function ka jo bhi naam rahega, that function is being called. So if this is a function, it's there in the memory, I could change the name of that particular function if I want. So I'm going to change the name of the function. Let's do that. I'm going to say the function is get underscore integer dot name. So name of the function is get integer. Oh, I thought of changing the name. So I'm going to just say this name equal to accept integer. Quotes में देना होगा. Accept integer is the name of the function. Correct? Now sometimes if I'm running this function, now you may say, sir, आपको यहाँ दिखाई दे रहा है which function you are running. True. But when I'm debugging this particular function, at times I may not know which function is being executed. Program के अंदर कहीं भी run हो रहा है. The moment I do that, it says accept integer is being called. That means it knows, every function knows what's its name. So when 34 did it has written 34, that's a different story. But it said accept integer is called. So every function has a property called as name that helps us to identify which function is currently being executed. So likewise, every function has a property called as doc. If this was a documentation comment of that function, if you forgot, what is this sum of the digits function going to do? ये आपको याद नहीं आ रहा है. So you could just say print dot dunder name dunder. तो ये तो function का नाम हो गया digit sum. ये क्या करता है? What does this function do? You can just say doc. Moment you say doc, it gives you all the information in the world. It is telling you about everything about the function. The function का parameter integer type का है. The number of whose in some of the digits is to be calculated. If it fails, what it raises, if the parameter pass is not of integer type, it raises runtime error. What it returns, it's an integer. क्या है? Answer of integer है? Some of the digits of the argument passed. So that's another property of a function. So like now we have seen two properties of function. Of every function has a name. Every function has a doc. Now I did not give any documentation string for this function. What would happen in that case? So if I now say dot dunder doc dunder, it does not give any information. The reason is very simple. You have not given any documentation comment from this function. Nothing like this. जैसे यहाँ दिया ऐसा कोई documentation comment नहीं दिया है. If I give such a documentation comment, if I give such documentation comment, it returns an integer. Okay. Accepts integer from user and returns the same. ऐसा आपने कर लिया इसको documentation comment दे दिया. You think about some right names or something like that. You have done that. Now here, if I now write the same statement, which earlier did not generate anything, now it is generating. So to print in readable format, you could just say print. It says returns integer, accepts integer from user and returns the same. So if doc is one property, likewise, name is also another property. So what are the various properties of this function? So if I say dir, okay, and I say get integer, you're saying, oh, there are so many other properties of this function. We have just now seen only two properties. Which are the properties that we have seen? We saw a property called as doc, and we have seen a property called as name. Okay, this particular function has been defined in a file. What's the name of the file? If you can anybody read this? दिखाई दे रहा है?
Yes, sir.
क्या है?
Function sum of digits.
Correct. So I'm going to check other property of that particular function. So every function has a lot of properties or attributes. And here I'll now say module. module. Because I see over here, there's one more property called as module. So I now say module. It'll tell you, okay, main hai. Now, what do you mean by main? Okay, what do you mean by main? There is nothing as main. There is something called as function sum of the digits.py. That is what we have. And here I said, if name equal to main. So it's telling, okay, name किसी का तो property, ये module का property name का value main है. Okay. और इसीलिए this has got executed. So it's saying, okay, where it belongs to? It belongs to the module called as main. Now listen to me very carefully. Yeah. But suppose Ashish tells me, sir, this function that I have designed, I want to use in another file. दूसरे किसी file में use करना चाहता हूँ. So he creates a new application. This is his new application. In this program also he has to accept get integer. Call this function. So one thing is he can copy paste, but why duplicate the things? He can reuse it. How? Let's check it out. Here I say some dummy function. Right, dummy already there. Let's say F2. Let me say this as F2. There is some file called as F2. ऐसे कुछ तो नाम देना था. And I have to use this function get integer. मुझे यहाँ भी चाहिए. So I say over here if render name render equal to render main render. अगर ऐसा है so I have to call that particular function called as main. Okay, I have to call that function called as get integer मुझे चाहिए. So I say num is equal to get underscore integer, and I say print integer is num. And print this. So if I want to run this code, it generates an error. It says, what is this get integer? I don't know. कहाँ से आ रहा है get integer? It says it has not been defined. है ना? It has been defined in this file. But you are trying to call it in some other file. It's not working. So I'll have to import this particular function, get integer, from this file. So I say from function underscore sum underscore of underscore digits import get integer. मैंने कहा इस फाइल से अंदर से इस फंक्शन को आप इंपोर्ट कीजिएगा. But do you remember here in this particular file we have the statement saying कौन सा function has been called, get integer dot name has been called. But last time what was the output of this? Anybody remembers?
Main.
Name का वैल्यू क्या था? Name का value is name of the function. There is another thing called as get module. Module का value क्या था?
Main.
Main था. I'm going to say F got this function from this particular module. But last time we printed this particular thing over here. And when we printed, it said module का नाम क्या है? तो main है. That's perfectly okay. But in this F2, if I'm going to say get integer and I'm going to get this number, let's run this code. It says function sum of the spelling से ये क्या? Function underscore sum underscore of digits. क्या लिखा मैंने? Function underscore sum underscore of digits. Okay. So when I'm running, क्या कहता है? Get integer has been called. Got this function from क्या कह रहा है? Function underscore sum of the digits, and then you enter integer. I enter integer as 44. When I run the code, it says integer is 44. But it did tell us from which file have you got this function, and what is that particular name of the function. So name of the function is get integer, and that function that was given by this name attribute, and module name now is sum of the functions, sum of the digits. That's the name of the module. So when we import a function from some other module, every file name is a module. In any program, the name of this particular property called as module is the name of the file. And the name for the function, the value of this particular property called as module is name of the file. Every file is a module. And the property of this name attribute for this particular function is what is the name that you have given to this function, which you could always change. You can just say get integer dot name equal to, or equal to, single equal to some name. So whatever name, like doc was also there. So if I say doc, I'm going to get these things. If I say module, I'll get the name of the file. If I say name, I'll get whatever name is the name of the function, original name of the function, or if you have assigned a name to that function, whatever is the case. So that will be, so module, name, doc, all of these are nothing but attributes of the function. These are some characteristic properties of the function. They help us to identify the function. Now, why do you need to identify function? I again repeat, if I'm debugging the application step by step or whatever it is, if I'm debugging the application at runtime, I want to know where this function come from, which module this function came from. Dot module will tell you which module that particular function came from. There can be two functions with almost the same name. So at times we get confused. Which function is coming from where? You may have imported a lot of things. So you need to know where is this function coming from, to which file it belongs to which module it belongs to. The dunder module dunder will tell us the module to which that function belongs to. Name will be the name of the function, which you can always change by just saying equal to, and you can assign any value. So there are several such attributes which are there for every function. And think about attribute like a property of a function. So there is one more attribute called as doc that we just now saw. Python attaches a string identifier to every function at creation time for debugging purpose. Oh, that was about name. Then we have docstring. Python has a nifty feature called as documentation string, usually referred to by its shorter name, that's docstring. Docstrings are an important tool you should make use of, since it helps us to document the program better and make it easier to understand. So if Viraj writes a function and I want to know what is that function's purpose, he's not going to share the code of the function, but the purpose of the function will be identified by this docstring. So these are two very interesting properties that are there. We can even get the docstring back, say from a function when the program is actually running. That's what we actually saw. Give me a second. We'll just. So we saw very few properties of a function. So two properties that we explored today, or you can say attributes, properties, characteristics, everything is the same. Huh? So you can give it any name. Some call it attribute, some call it properties, some call it characteristic feature of that function. So we saw two such properties. One was a name, and there's a docstring. If anybody has any question, please ask before we go to the next part of our discussion. Any questions, anybody?
Can we call it as a methods?
No, we cannot call them as methods.
Because
they are
it
functions.
starts after full stop only.
No. These are, okay. This is a good observation, because string dot upper I said it's a method. Correct. Because that was a function stored inside that particular module called a string. So dot operator is not always used to access methods. Dot operator is also used to access a function which is stored inside a module. So it's a way of organizing your code. So you have a package. Inside a package, we have modules. Inside modules, we have functions. And every function has a property. So I can just give a name. Example, you have a marketing module. You have a package called as marketing. You can say MKTJ. But marketing, you had some package module called as promotion. So you can have mktj.promotion. That means inside a package called as marketing, there is a module called as promotion. And promotion there could be dot and there could be a TV ad. So it could be like mktj.marketing.TV ads. Okay, ऐसे चल सकता है. So dot operator is always used to access a member or a property. So function which has been stored inside a class is a method. I'll talk about it in detail later. So it's a member of a class. So function is a member of a module. So we are saying module name dot function. So when I say from typing import final, so final is a property member of that module called as typing. So in this case, we had this particular, let me just show this file. In this case, we had this particular file whose name is function sum of digits. So that's a module. Inside this module, there is get integer. Inside this module, there is sum of the digits. And how could we check that? Suppose this is the module name. So if I import it, suppose I'm here, or I say import, look, watch this. I say import function underscore sum underscore digits. We never do this. Function underscore sum of the digits. Is the right name? Function underscore sum of. Here it worked correctly.
सर ऑफ नहीं है
ना? अच्छा, import में नहीं लिखा मैंने.
हाँ.
Yeah, it has got imported. And if I say dir of that, can you see? इस function के सारे properties है. उसके अंदर एक member है, get integer, sum of the digits. So when I say this, watch it, module name dot get integer dot doc. तो डॉट ऑपरेटर यहाँ भी यूज कर रहा हूँ. तो मैं कह रहा हूँ इस मॉड्यूल के अंदर का ये जो मेंबर है उस मेंबर का डॉक्यूमेंटेशन मुझे चाहिए. बट डॉक के लिए डंडर डॉक डंडर. इट टेल्स यू व्हाट इज द डॉक्यूमेंटेशन. अगर वो रीडेबल फॉर्म में प्रिंट करना, यू कैन जस्ट से प्रिंट. Printed. So dot operator is called as member access operator. Dot operator is member access operator. That function, if it's a member of a class, it's called as a method. The dot operator is a member access operator. Note carefully, it's a member access operator. So whenever you have to access a member of anything, we'll use dot operator. It could be a member of a file, that's a module, or it could be a member of that particular function or the property of the function. To access the property or the member, you can always use dot. So dot can be used to access a property or attribute, and every method inside every member of a module is also a property of that particular module. It's a attribute of the module. So you can get all those attributes by using this dot operator. So it's not just to use to access methods. It is used to access all this. Understood this? Everybody, quick feedback. So, and I hope you have also understood how am I reusing the things. So tomorrow Ashish is using the function that Harsh designed. He just had to import that particular thing and start accessing the things. But then the name of the module is the module Harsh ne jo design kiya. Ashish will get to see Harsh ka applic function, suppose. And from that function, whatever function he wants to use, he can use it. Ashish, kya doubt hai? Ashish, kya doubt hai?
Nothing.
Okay. Now that we have seen this particular thing, doc strings, always keep in mind, in almost all programming language that will come across, there is one basic property of a function that we all assume. What is that? A function can take in variable number of arguments. We saw it, star, args, or it may not take in any argument, like get string in our case was not taking any argument. The function may or may not take in any number of arguments, 0 to n number of arguments, depending upon how the function has been designed. If they are position arguments, then they are required. If they are keyword arguments, then also they are required. But if the keyword has a default value, then they become optional arguments, parameters, optional parameters. You remember that, huh? All these features that we are seeing. But every function can return only a single value. Every function can return only a single value. So you may, depending on how the function has been designed, you may pass one or more values to a function as function arguments. But once the calculation is done, a function returns only a single value. But what if I want to return more than one values in a function? Just to touch upon some concept that you may be learning in other programming language like C++ and C and other languages. There's a concept of call by value and call by reference. The concept of call by, those who don't know C or C++, forget. But those who know, I'm just trying to explain in brief so that you can draw parallel. There's a concept called as call by value and call by reference. The concept of call by value is what we always use, but call by reference is to be used when we want the function return more than one values, which is impossible. So what we do is we pass it by reference, the address received in a pointer, and pointers will manipulate the actual data and so on. In Python, we can actually return more than one values. But syntactically, Python says it returns only a single value. Then how can I return more than one value? Because Python has built-in types like list, tuples, and so on. So you can return a single list. And in single list, you could pack as many number of elements you would like to. Or you may just put a comma and return more than one values. They are also returned. But then are they returned as multiple values or a single value? That's something let us look at. The function can return more than one values as well if you wish to. So we saw about docstring. Now let's talk about returning multiple values. So we are thinking of designing a function which can return multiple values. Python return can return multiple values. How is that? If I have to sort between the two numbers, I'm going to check if number 1 is less than number 2, return number 1 and number 2, else return number 2 and number 1. So if I say sort 3, 2, that will return two values, either number 1, number 2, or number 2 and number 1. What it will be done will be unpacked and assigned to this n1 and n2, and then I can print what is n1, what is n2, or which is larger, which is smaller. I could do that. Order mein chahiye. So function can be designed to return more than one values. So let's take an example where we do such a thing. Look at this. I have a function called as maximum. Let me hide the other functions so that you do not waste your time looking at them. I have a function called as maximum. If I say x and y are two values of type integer or two parameters of type integer that we are expecting to be passed to this function. If x is greater than y, we're going to return single value x. So let's debug this particular code from here. Let's debug this particular code from here to see what actually happens. First time I pass 2 and 20. Okay, I'm going to pass 2 and 20. Let me just change the order. There's some reason why I'm changing the order. Here, I give a call to this function maximum. I'm passing 2 and 20. Watch it very carefully. So 2 will be assigned to this x and 20 will be assigned to this y. So we come to this function. And if you watch the variable explorer, note kijega x is having value 2 and y is having value 10. Now tell me, is 2 greater than 10?
No.
Is 2 equal to 10?
No.
Yes or no?
No, sir.
No.
It is 2 equal to else. If it is not greater, if it is not equal, then obviously y is the larger one. So y का value 10 है, so it is going to return the larger value. So this condition false, this also false, so it returns y. So it will return the largest value of y, that was 10. देखिए यहाँ y का value 10 है, that value has now been returned and we printed maximum is 10. Great, that was very nice. Then I passed 12 and 10. Now we'll check, is 12 greater than 10? Because the first argument that we passed will be received in the first parameter. The second argument that we passed will be received in the second parameter. So now we're checking, is 12 greater than 10?
Yes.
Yes. If that is true, watch it. We are here at line number 7. If that is true, it goes and returns x. So it has written x, and what's the value of x? Value of x currently is 12. So 12 will correctly get returned. Check it out. We come over here, we're returning it, and when we print it, it says maximum is 12. So we all are happy with this because the function returning a value correctly. So when I pass 2, 2, well, let's see what happens. I say is 2 greater than 2, condition is false. Is 2 equal to 2? Yes, the values are equal. So that's the message it has returned, and that has got printed. So first time it said maximum is 12. Next time it said, first time it said maximum is 10 because we had passed 2 and 10. Next time when we pass 12 and 10, it says maximum is 12. And now when I give a call where I passed something very different, 2 and 2, in that case, maximum ka value ke answer ka value ke values are equal. And that is precisely that has got printed. Maximum values are values are equal. Okay, the values are equal. So point is, a function I cannot say what's the return type over here. I can't say the return type, what's the return? Because if it returns x, it's an integer. If it returns y, if it returns this thing, it's a string. And if it returns this, it's again an integer. So it's difficult for me to say what is the function going to return. So I leave it blank. मैं नहीं बता रहा function क्या return करेगा. Because sometimes it may return integer and sometimes it may return string. So returns last statement to be executed in the function. Function can contain multiple return statements, but only one of them is executed. So you must have seen first time when we ran this code, only this statement got printed, returned. Next time y was returned, and third time values are not equal has been returned. Can you see this? First time 10 was returned, next time 12 was returned, and next time value is equal. That value has now been returned. So function can return more than one different values. So sometimes it returns integer and sometimes it is returning a string. That's another beauty of Python. But now let us talk about another function called as sort. So this particular function called as sort that we have. Oh, let's finish with this. Maximum of 2, 2, you could have directly printed. Values are equal. Maximum is 2, 1, okay, that 2. Maximum is 3, 5, 5. Look at the output over here in this window. 5. How did that happen? When I passed 3, 5, so it's is 3 less than or not here? We're checking is 3 greater than 5? False. Is 3 equal to 5? False. So it returns 5 because we're checking with y, 3 and 5. So it correctly got answer as 5. We got answer 5. We're here. Now we're going to call to function sort. Sort will return either of these two values, 3, 2. So when we give a call to this particular function sort, control comes over here. It's checking is number 1, 5 less than kya numbers 2 and 3. 3 and 2 is 3 less than 2? False. So I'm saying return 2, 1. That means ये जो 2 reverse में return कर रहे हैं. Here 3, 2 है. So 3 was assigned to this variable called as number 1, and 2 10, sorry, 2 कहाँ गया है? ये 2 was assigned to this particular function called as number 1, and 3 was assigned to this particular function because you are passing sort में, you are passing 3 and 12, sorry. So 3 is assigned to the first parameter and 12 is passed to the second parameter. Let me check, is 3 less than 12? Yes. So we're going to return number, number 2. So we're going to return 2 values. Okay, and they're all correct because the maximum sort karoge 3 and 2 value. So third position pe, or sorry, you're going to return 3 and 2. So 3 is assigned to number 1, 2 is assigned to number 2, 3 is less than 2, condition is false. So it returns number 2, number 1. So it returns 2 and 1. So here this function is returning 2 values. So how are you going to receive those 2 values? So what we do is we have a concept of unpacking. So if this function returns more than 1 values or is unpacking more than values, that will correctly get assigned to num1 and num2. So num1 will get assigned value as 3 and num2 will get assigned value as 12. Num1 will become 2 and num2 will become 3. Whereas 3, you will check, is 3 less than 2, conditions false, so return number 2, number 1. So number 2 क्या आपके केस में भी 2, 1 is what it will return. So let's check it out. Let's start debugging the code from here now. Oh, we are already there. So let's debug the code. We go here. Number 1 is less than number 2. Number 1 का value 3 है. So that's what we have called. Number 1 का value 3 है. Number 2 का value 2 है. देखिए यहाँ. Number 1 का value 3 है. Number 2 का value 2 है. Can you see this? I'm changing it. So the first argument is assigned to the first variable. The second argument is assigned to the second parameter. And we check, is the first smaller than second? Sort. Is 3 smaller than 2? Condition is false. So it returns 2, 3. Watch it. Is it written 2, 3? देखिए यहाँ number 2 में 2 है, number 1 में 3 है. So it is written more than one values. Point is, when I say n1, n2, this has now been unpacked and been assigned to variables called as num2 and num1 and num2. So when I print num1 and num2, it correctly gives in the right order 2, 3 and so on. It is correctly in the right order. But the point over here is not just returning what value. I'll call this function sort. Watch it. I'll call this function sort with any number of your choice. So if I say 34, 56, it's saying 34, 56. Great. If I say 344, 56, it's कहता है 56, 344. यानी ascending order में numbers दे रहा है. Point over here is, if I say print type of function sort, when the function I'm trying to check which is the largest value, here कहता है tuple है. So while you are returning more than one values by putting a comma, like if I say t is equal to 67, 45, 34, 2, ऐसा मैंने कह दिया. So if I say print t, it gives me those values. That means this is a tuple, and this tuple has got all these values. So this is a single tuple containing 4 values. So likewise, when I'm saying number 1, number 2, that's precisely what we can actually do. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. इस तरीके से आप value दे सकते हो. तो अगर if you can define such a statement, you are also allowed to return such a statement. So when we return more than one values, they are always returned as a tuple. They are always returned as a tuple and nothing more than that. Tuple करके return करेगा. So this function appears to be returning 2 values, but don't get confused. It is not returning 2 values. It is returning only a single tuple containing 2 values. It is returning only a single tuple containing 2 values. Number 1, number 2, yeah, number 2, number 1. It will always give the values since because of a logic, it will give the values in ascending order, but it has returned more than one values. It is not possible in C and C++ to ever design a function which returns more than one values. But Python allows you just by putting a comma. ये भी return करो, ये भी return करो, ये भी return करो, किसको? जहां से उसे कॉल किया गया है. Okay, so if I'm calling this particular function from here, at this place in my program, the value should get returned, both the values, and they will now get assigned to this n1, n2. Now look, if I have tuple having 4 values, 4 values, and if I say n1, n2, n3, n4 is equal to this tuple, no error. Now if I print n1 67, n2 45, n3 34, and n4 2. So 67, 45, 34, 2. 67, 45, 34, 2. So that was unpacking. So if it returns a tuple, this was obviously a tuple. This was tuple only, t. So if I just say type of t, it's a tuple. So if you make an attempt to return more than one values, it is not that more than one values will return. Those more than one values will be returned as a single tuple containing that many number of values. So if here I am in this particular code, I'm saying 10, 20 or whatever it is, that's an order in which I am returning. So actually we are not returning 2 values, we are returning single tuple. So even in Python, a function can return more than one values. Syntactically, no, but logically, yes. because here when I write this statement as a general error, it appears to be as if I'm returning two values, but what gets returned is a tuple containing these two values. Okay, here we saw that. Here. I call this function sort. Whatever returns, I'm going to say type and I'm going to print. Okay, this is returning tuple. So sort is a function which is returning tuple that is collection of two values. So likewise, I have another function called as min-max, जिसका code अभी आपको लिखना है based on whatever we have discussed here now. So take down the problem statement and design one function for me. Before that, अब तक जो देखा उसमें कोई doubt है क्या?
No, sir.
Okay. Give a quick feedback, everybody. Tick या cross. Okay. Now that you have done that, now note the assignment. जो आपको करना है. Write a function. Write a function called as min-max. Write a function called as min-max. Write a function called as min-max, which takes in variable number of integers as its argument. Which takes in variable number of integers as argument. It can pass one number, it can pass 10 numbers, which takes in variable number of integers as its argument and returns the largest and the smallest integer passed, and returns the largest and the smallest integer passed. So if I pass 3, 1, 5, 10, 20, 40, so it should return 1 and 40 because this one is largest, another is smallest. That's one function. So you could start with this function, but there is another example that I want you to solve. Take one more. Write a function called as get top 3 scores. Get and function name should be in lower camel case. यानी G small चाहिए get का, top का T capital चाहिए, 3 का T capital चाहिए. So get 3 top. If I call this particular function as get 3 top scores, so your name of the function is get top 3 scores. G small, T top का T capital, 3 का T capital, and scores का S capital. So write a function called as get top 3 scores, which receives arbitrary number of which receives scores of variable number of students, कभी 4 लोगों का स्कोर मिलेंगे, कभी 40 लोगों के स्कोर मिलेंगे, which receives score of variable number of students from a class, which receives marks of variable number of students in a class, and returns the scores of the top 3 students. Returns the score of the top 3 students. The top 3 students उनका score चाहिए मुझे. So these are 2 assignments that you have to be solved right away. अभी immediately solve करना है. तो पहला क्या था assignment? Read it for me. आशीष read करो.
Write a function called as min-max, which takes variable number of integers as argument and return min.
And returns
Smallest and largest.
smallest. 2 वैल्यू रिटर्न करने आपको. और दूसरे इसमें क्या है हमने?
Write a function name get top 3 scores.
Correct.
Take scores of variable number of students from a class and returns score of top 3 students.
That returns
Score of top 3 students.
वापस बोलिए आराम से.
Score of top 3 students.
Score of top 3 कहाँ से? Did I say something like that?
Yes, sir. Return score of top 3 students.
Score. मुझे लगा 4 कह रहे हैं आप, ओके स्कोर कह रहे हैं, स्कोर्स ऑफ टॉप 3 स्टूडेंट्स, तो वो 100 स्टूडेंट भी हो सकते हैं या कितने भी हो सकते हैं, इट रिटर्न्स स्कोर्स ऑफ टॉप 3 स्टूडेंट्स, not 4, score of top 3 students. So do that. Come on, I'm waiting for you. I'll put you into 2 groups. So I'm opening the breakout room. You are divided into 2 groups and you have been assigned manually, automatically. So Ashutosh, Prithviraj, Viraj in one group, Harsh, Rahul and Vishwajit another group. Please join the room. Please join the rooms. I've seen the codes that you have written, but then when you are designing functions, there are a few things which are very important. Validation, input validation is very important. And when you are developing, you are just designing a function. Function's objective is to create a piece of code which is decomposed to such an extent that it cannot be further decomposed. It's a working unit. So to test that working unit, you need not build an application. You could directly give a call to that function in your program to test it. And your code coverage should be very good. That means every branch of your code should be checked. That means when you give a call, don't just stop by giving 1 or 2 calls. Give all possible different various combinations. One team's code failed when we passed no arguments to a function. The other team 1 probably had designed that function min-max correctly. Both the teams have designed that function correctly under normal circumstances. One was failing when no argument has been passed. Another, the code that was written was not Pythonic. So generally for loop लगा के minimum maximum find किया था amongst आपके दोनों टीम ने. That was correct, I said. Mark my word, I said it's correct. I did not say it is the best way to think about. The other team used function called as max and min. We already have those function called as max and min, which can be applied to any tuple. So why do you need to run a loop and do all those comparisons when max and min functions are already there? So first, write the code in Pythonic way. Second, do input validations and make sure that your code does not fail on the major cases. Unless the user does something very weird, forget. But if I don't pass the data, because the question was, it takes an arbitrary number of values. So कितने भी score ले सकता है, values ले सकता है, 0 to n. I did not say minimum 3 लेगा या minimum 5 लेगा. So make sure that you solve that particular code as a team, yeah, individually, because you have already seen that. And we'll take up that particular thing tomorrow when we meet for the discussion. Before we stop, let me share the examples that we have taken up today for your reference. I'm sharing only 2. I'm not sharing the third one because that contains the result for the example, the topic that we are currently discussing. On that note, we'll stop here today. Make sure that is solved. Take my what I've identified, what corrections that you're doing. Make those corrections in your code. You could share it with your team members also what you have done, because only 2 of you have the actual source code. I think it was Rahul and Ashish has the actual code. Share with your friends and improvise on it, solve it, and be ready for tomorrow's session. So on that note, I'll stop for today. Thank you all for the session. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.